Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 22nd, 2023 New Bern Board of Aldermen meeting. The prayer tonight is going to be given by Alderman Best.
Thank you, Mayor. I usually give a prayer, but tonight I'm going to ask my friend, Pastor Robert Johnson, if he would deliver the prayer.
Our wonderful aldermen and mayor and all the other official leaders of this great historic city, thank you for this opportunity to stand before you to offer prayer for this meeting, and also our citizens that have come and to voice their concerns. Let us pray.
6 p.m.
Our gracious, loving Father in heaven, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Maker, the Father that loves all your children, one and all the same. You cares for us, you provides for us, and you ever present with us. So we come in this meeting of our citizens and our representatives, our family, asking thee, Lord, that you will look upon us. And if anything, dear God, that will be a hindrance of this meeting being what you desire for us to be, a meeting of respect and honor to you, to each other, and to our citizens as well as our representatives. So we thank you for each one that you have allowed to come and to be a part of this important meeting. So guide us and direct us in our deliberation. Give us all a listening ear, wisdom and understanding, dear God, that we might present the issues and the concerns that will come before our board, our mayor, and representatives this evening, dear God. It will be of respect to you in the betterment of our great city. You have brought us a long way, and we have done many awesome things, but we still have a long way to go to reach the ministry, dear God, that you have called us all together to be a part of. So bind us all together, citizens as well as representatives, in your spirit. And we say, in the name of Jesus, thank you for listening to us. Thank you for answering our prayer. Amen.
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 Amen. Amen.
If you would, please stand and join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Creel.
Here.
Alderman Royal. Here. Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Odham.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Bernson.
Alderman Brinson is a little under the weather, but he's feeling better now. I think he just sent us all an email, so he's watching from home tonight. So, Bob, we're thinking about you. Get well soon. Okay, has the board had the chance to look at the agenda? If so, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Next is the consent agenda. It's the pleasure of the board.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Priddle.
Alderman Creel.
Yes.
Alderman Royal.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to item number 6, we are going to conduct a public hearing and consider adopting an ordinance to Annex 201 Riverside Drive. Mr. Hughes.
Good evening, Mayor, Alderman. Andrew Gatz has submitted a petition to annex that property on Riverside Drive in Township 2. The property consists of a single-family residence on a .233 acre tract. After conducting the public hearing, the board is asked to consider a request for annexation.
Any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Hearing none at this time, I will open the public hearing. If you would like to speak with regards to item number 6, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Now the board should consider adopting a resolution or consider adopting an ordinance to annex 201 Riverside Drive.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve an ordinance to annex 201 Riverside Drive.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Royal.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. Moving on to item number 7, update on the Old North State League proposal for Kafer Park. Mr. Hughes.
So during the July 25th board meeting, Alec Allard with the Old North State League made a presentation to the governing board to request a lease on Kafer Park for a summer collegiate wooden bat baseball league in New Bern. After his presentation, the board asked for some community input. So on August 9th, we released a survey through the press and social media as well as on our city website. We also had hard copies of that survey available at City Hall and Parks and Recreation facilities. And to date, we have received 380 surveys. So you were sent some information in the weekly report and also as part of this agenda packet. We gave you an update in front of you this evening. I think there were about 15 or 20 additional responses. 94% of the survey respondents support a proposed summer league in New Bern. What we saw was the main concern on the survey itself was parking. And so we did have Public Works to look at on-street parking to see how many spaces we could possibly gather. And so we looked at basically at a quarter-mile radius of basically Kafer Park heading toward Cedar Grove Cemetery and going down George Street and Queen Street. And so including the on-street parking that is currently not marked, as well as looking at the George Street splash pad and the grassy area we have behind the senior center, we could accommodate approximately 350 spaces for vehicles. So I wanted to let you know that. A public meeting was held on Monday, August 14th at the Omega Center. Approximately 46 folks were in attendance for that. Based on the information we saw on Facebook, 2,400 viewed the live stream, and about 40 have watched that on YouTube. The meeting was also recorded and is available on City 3 TV. During the meeting, Alec Allred with the Old North State League made the same presentation he gave to the governing board, and then he had provided an opportunity for citizens to ask whatever questions they had. And so you've got a summary. If you weren't able to attend the meeting, you've got a summary in front of you as well as of some of the questions. Overall, it looked like there was a positive reception by those in attendance. We're happy to answer any questions you may have regarding that public input.
Board have questions?
Foster, besides parking, there were a number of comments about bathroom facilities at the park. Are there currently facilities available at the park?
There currently are restroom facilities available there, and off the top of my head, I think there are a toilet and a urinal in the men's restroom and at least 2 toilets in the women's restroom. And so if something occurred with that, it would really be up to the group that's leasing to add additional porta-johns or whatnot to accommodate the appropriate size crowd.
Are they in a condition where there needs to be any improvement made to them, or are they fully functional?
They are fully functional and currently in use by the current baseball league that's playing there.
Okay. Also, getting back to the parking, Between Kafer Park and Ebenezer Church, there are two city-county-owned lots that, just the fact that they are there, they're utilized for parking, for church events, for events at the Omega Center, for the existing baseball that's played at the park. Would it be possible to have Public Works get over there, maybe just clean those lots up a little bit to make them maybe fully utilized for parking, since off-street parking will be at a premium?
Yes, it would.
If this, program gets approved.
Yes.
Thank you.
With regard to the second page of the handout we received about preserving the history of the park and who will maintain the fields, underserved kids, will they be able to attend the games? And do they have grants or scholarships? There's a lot of open-ended questions here. So whenever we move forward and look at that contract, I'd certainly like to see all of those components addressed in the contract.
Okay. Alderman Best?
Yes, and the only problem that I really is concerned about is the netting, to make sure that there's, however they're gonna rehab that field or whatever, that there's sufficient netting there to catch all those fly balls, to keep them from hitting the church and people's homes and cars possibly as well. So that was my concern when moving forward with the contract as well.
So a great question, Alderman Best. And so the city, over the last few years, has installed netting in the outfield, and most recently we've installed some behind Ebenezer Presbyterian Church to block any balls from hitting that. During the public input meeting, Alec already did say that if things worked out with the lease, their goal was to put some netting on the left side of the field so balls would not go out into George Street.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's it.
I just had those two concerns, the netting along left field, because if we're going to utilize the on-street parking, I think it makes sense to have netting there. And then Alderman Priel brought up a great question. Is there a city ordinance or some sort of requirement that would generate them to require them to put porta-johns in based off of the attendance?
There is not an ordinance that would require that. Really, it's going to be the crowd size, and that's going to really dictate it. Case in point, if we have a concert, we're expecting a big crowd, that usually dictates we need to add more. But in terms of the number per people, we do not have anything to address that.
Okay.
Mayor, I do have another question.
Sure.
And also, I forgot to ask as well, I know in the comments when I was reading them about security of people's cars and break-ins, are police officers normally at these games?
So if the league wanted to have officers to attend, that would be something they would work out with PD for that. Now, police are always patrolling around, but for something like that, they would have to work something out with, the league would have to work something out with police.
So the league will be responsible if somebody's car get vandalized or broken into?
No, ma'am.
So, okay.
Alderman Best, I'll just say that I've parked my car around that area many times, and I don't really have any concerns. I think it's well lit, especially during baseball games. It's very well lit. So I think that this is going to have the opportunity to open up a part of the city that some people may not frequent, and they may have some misconceptions about the area as well.
Oh, well, there's always misconceptions about that area, but the reason why I asked that question was because it was on the survey.
Sure.
There was a lot of people that had some issues with that, and that was it.
None. What do you need from us?
All I need is if the board supports this, give us direction to enter into negotiations for a lease.
I'm in support. Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Indeed.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman
Yes.
Priel. It's unanimous. All right. Item number 8, discussion of proposed carts shelter location. Mr. Childs.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. I was here tonight to provide y'all an update on the final part or final leg of the 2019 bus shelter project that Development Services had utilized in determining necessary as part of their transportation needs in the city's current 5-year consolidated plan. So this will be the final shelter of the 3 that they had selected locations for. This 3rd location would serve the Volt Center campus, as it's used as an access to jobs and job training for people in the city. As you can tell on the map, the area selected is internal of the Volt Center campus, totally within their site. I have met on site with college officials to go over the location, and we're in agreement with this location. And we're planning to move forward with construction. We estimate a 15-day construction time with Public Works assembling and building the site. Weather dependent, but we should be able to get it done fairly quickly. If you have any questions, I'm more than available to answer them for you.
Board have questions? I just have one. I know that there's a gate that secures that parking lot. I'm assuming that it's going to be open and accessible anytime that carts is going to be operating. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
All right. Thank you for asking before we install this. I think that's
Certainly.
a great step in the right direction, so thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Moving on to item number 9, consider adopting a resolution authorizing the exchange of real property owned by the city identified as a portion of tax parcel ID 8209-12003 for real property identified as tax parcel 8209-1300 owned by Weyerhaeuser Company. And just as a note, you have an updated handout in front of you that was recently presented today from the attorney with some corrections. So I believe Jordan Hughes is going to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of the board, what you have before you with this agenda item is a recommendation authorizing the exchange of real property for a small piece of city-owned property for a small piece of property owned by the Weyerhaeuser Company. The piece of property owned by the city is a portion of one of our well sites that was originally part of Weyerhaeuser Timberlands. We purchased that back in about 2009 in order to construct our new water treatment plant. Most of those sites are a little bigger than we needed for the actual wells, so we have some buffer area around all of those well sites. We've evaluated the requests from Weyerhaeuser on this site, and the small 0.23 acre sliver they need is outside of any of our well buffered areas and will not impact any of our current operations or planned operations at the site. And what we are asking Weyerhaeuser for in exchange for this is a small piece of property adjacent to another one of our well sites on the south side of Highway 70. So what we've asked Weyerhaeuser for in exchange for this is a 0.66 acre parcel on the south side that's adjacent to another one of our well sites that will help accommodate future water system improvements for the city. We've had a local company do an evaluation of the property value of each. That's included in information in the packet. You see the property values are fairly close, only about a $3,000 difference between the two. In discussions with legal counsel for both parties, the exchange of property seemed to be the most efficient way to accommodate the future development needs for the Weyerhaeuser Company along with the future water system needs of New Bern. So with your approval, we'll move forward with the exchange of these parcels, and both parties will have what they need to move forward. Be happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions?
Jordan, is the piece that we would be transferring to Weyerhaeuser, is there a specific plan that Weyerhaeuser has for the adjacent lot plus the piece that they would acquire from us?
Very, very good question. If I'm not mistaken, the Weyerhaeuser Company is working with one of the existing property owners and developers out in the West New Bern development on expanding their current operation. In order to do that, they're having some access issues because of where the well site's at. So they're basically cutting the corner of that well site to open up opportunity for expanding the existing business that's out there. I think it's Dr. Xanis' business is the one that's in question.
I mean, the proposed use I mean, you're comfortable that it would have no
Yes,
future
sir. I've
impact
seen some
on the-
preliminary plans of what the intended use is, and basically it's just to provide some driveway access. They didn't quite have enough room to get all the access they needed to connect two parcels. They needed to kind of cut across the corner of that property to make that work. We've had the city's cross-connection coordinator review it, and compare what the requirements of our wellhead protection program are, just to make sure there be no issues with the proposed use and the conditions of our wellhead protection program, and there's no issues with the proposed use, in that proximity to the existing well site.
And I see that the parcel that the city would be acquiring from Weyerhaeuser is a potential future site for an elevated water tank.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's no questions. Any other questions or statements? I make a motion. Make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing exchange of real property owned by the city identified as portion of tax parcel 8209-12003 for real property identified as tax parcel 8209-1300 owned by Weyerhaeuser Company.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Astor.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, consider adopting a resolution approving a lease agreement with the New Bern Craven County Public Library for 408 Hancock Street. Mr. Hughes.
Mayor, we were approached by Catherine Clowers several weeks ago about their interest in renting the Old Fireman's Museum located at 408 Hancock, and I'm going to ask Ms. Clowers to come up and talk about the reasons why.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Honorable Mayor Oldham and New Bern Alderman, thank you for allowing us to address the board. My name is Kat Clowers, and this is our New Bern Craven County Public Library and branch manager. She's new recently, so I wanted to introduce her to you. She has been with the New Bern Craven County Library since she was 16. She's well known in our community for her vivid and entertaining story times, and many of our adults and young children today recognize her as she walks across our streets. So we're very excited to have her here, and I wanted y'all to be aware that you can contact her at any time if you have any question regarding the New Bern Library. So before I begin to discuss the renovation project of the New Bern Library, the CPRL board met today, and they asked that they requested that I thank you for your working with the library system, and your dedication to your community and constituents is applauded by them. So please accept their thanks. As you are aware, the New Bern Craven County Library sustained significant structural damage during flooding of Hurricane Florence. Erosion of the soil underneath the facility has caused the slab to break, and there's areas that are raised. It is causing additional structural damage. Funds were allocated to the county to do repairs, but the project is a 6 to 9 month project in which the library would have to be closed to the community. As you are aware, the New Bern Craven County Library is crucial to our community. We circulate over 395 hotspots of free internet, over 150 laptops, as well as our circulation of books, e-books, audiobooks, outdo most of the libraries on the eastern coast. So it is one of our highest used libraries on the East Coast. Also, during the renovations, they are going to repair the flooring, install new carpeting. They will also be redoing all of the tiles in our restrooms and other areas, and they will be repairing cracks, painting, and we will also, Ms. Jenkins has a basic floor plan redoing the actual layout so it is a more contemporary layout that will meet the needs of our community and patrons as they use our library. Obviously, technology has become more important. There will be a computer lab. There will be an area where people can relax and eat and drink, as well as a bright and vibrant area for our young adults to visit and utilize the library and make it part of their lives. So we are requesting that you allow us during this period to utilize the Old Fireman's Museum as a temporary location so that we can continue to serve this area. As again, we are critical to the support of some of our your constituents in accessing internet and providing entertainment as well as academic to our community and our children in the area. Today, the CPRL board did approve the lease as it was presented to us to go forward in signature by our chair if you so move forward with the lease. Do you have any questions for us?
Board have questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution approving a lease agreement with the New Bern Craven County Public Library for 408 Hancock Street.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Kinsey.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad we could help. Item number 11, consider adopting a resolution approving a deed conveying 1101 Main Street to the Redevelopment Commission for the City of New Bern. Mr. Hughes or Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams, I believe.
Yes, good evening, Board and Mayor. Mr. Curtis Stewart came before the Redevelopment Commission requesting a bid on the city-owned property that's located in the redevelopment area with the address of 1101 Main Street. The Redevelopment Commission considered his request, and they asked if the city would allow them to convey the property over to the Redevelopment Commission so that they could put some restrictions on that property. Being it is in a C4 zone, they wanted to ensure that the property would be utilized, as Mr. Stewart had indicated, for a residential property that he wanted to build, which it also adjoins to a property he already owns over there. And they just want to see if they could put the restrictions on the property similar to what they do with their property that they currently own with the Redevelopment Commission property.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Just a comment before we get the discussion started. They obviously do not own the property. The city owns the property, correct? And they are free to put restrictions on property that they own. So the properties that we have conveyed to them previously, they are free to put restrictions. My question is, where do we draw the line? Where do we come up with some sort of policy that all parcels that just happen to fall in with the Redevelopment Commission, that they do not have purview over having someone go to them and make a presentation when they don't own the property? I guess that's my first question. Is there something that this board direction that we need to give to make sure that property that is not owned by the Redevelopment Commission that they do not discuss and have purview over?
Mayor, this board can do whatever it would like, but I would suggest that the citizens need a procedure as to how to engage with the city if they want to buy real property within the redevelopment area. Currently, they go to the Redevelopment Commission first to see if the commission has any desire or need to impose restrictions in the deed, because you simply can't. So if the commission concluded there's no need for any restrictions, then they would just say pass, and the matter would come to you to initiate the sales process. So that's designed to give this board more information, because if they start here, your question is going to be, gee, do we need conditions on this property? So someone has to address the need for conditions or not. Either this board can do it or the Redevelopment Commission can do it. But that's going to be step one.
So the current procedure, since they don't own it, would be someone that's interested in purchasing it would come to City Hall like they would if it was a parcel outside of the Redevelopment Commission, make the offer and start the process, correct?
Yes, sir. Well, but then it goes on your agenda.
Correct.
and you start the legal process, but if you want to impose a condition, you have to transfer it to the redevelopment commission, so that time and money has been wasted if we start here.
So my stance is, if we have property that we own that we want conditions put on, then we need to go ahead and convey all of those parcels to the redevelopment commission. This is currently owned by the city of New Bern, not the redevelopment commission. So the process should be come to City Hall, make an offer, and we start the legal process. That's my stance. I'll go ahead and open it up for anybody that has a discussion.
Well, that was, when, my concern was this, I went out there and looked at the parcel and found a piece of property at 1101 Main Street, and I saw that it was on the sellable list of the redevelopment commission. So if it's on, and the redevelopment commission had no use for it. So that's why I talked to Mr. Stewart, and I told him that, you know, we as a city, I don't see where we need to go in and strictly own city parcel, no ties with the county, that we need to go through this back and forth process, conveying it to the redevelopment commission, and then it has to come back to the board. I just think there's a lot of steps that we can avoid as a board, especially if, and I understand the process with the redevelopment commission, if there are parcels within their purview that they may have a use for. I understand that. That's why I went and looked at the sellable use, and it is up for sale. So that's why I feel that Mr. Stewart should be able, and we all are aware, we all know Mr. Stewart, we all know the properties that he's already purchased, that he's already rehabbed some of those properties, and he's in the current process of rehabbing some of the other properties he has. So we know Mr. Stewart, we know his actions, we know his, I really have some of his plans, and I know his actions, and we all are aware that he's a law-abiding citizen, and he goes along with the rules and regulations that the city puts out there ordinance-wise and whatsoever. And he's in the past has done everything that the city asked of him when it comes to properties that he has purchased for as redeveloping them or rehabbing them. So I just hope that the board will honor this request so that he can go ahead and submit a bid in to city clerk. And if, I don't know what action the board may have on this, whether y'all want to leave it as it is. We as the city-owned properties that the redevelopment commission has no use for, that we as a city, as a board, can go ahead on and, if we have a bid on them, go ahead and sell those properties.
So Barbara, I'm confused, Barbara, are you recommending that we transfer it to the redevelopment commission or not?
No, I'm saying, there's a lot of steps there, there's just a lot of back and forth that we as a city have the right to go ahead on and make a motion to go ahead on and sell this property to any citizen that come forth and submit a bid, because it's a city-owned parcel, strictly city-owned. Redevelopment Commission does not have no use for it. So that's what I'm saying. I just think that if there's a lot of other city-owned properties out there, and we may be going through the same process. If a citizen wants to purchase a lot and it's city-owned, then they're gonna have to go to the redevelopment commission, then the redevelopment commission has to review it, and then they have to bring it to the board, and then we have to review it, and then I just think there's a lot of steps there that we can just knock out by this property belonging to the city of New Bern strictly.
Alderman Kinsey.
The property belongs to the city of New Bern, and I like to go forward with the usual process that we do when we have property for sale.
Submit a review.
So, Mr. Attorney, I guess there's two options. We can approve the request that's on the agenda, which is to convey the property to the redevelopment commission, let them put restrictions, let them sell it, or the board could give direction tonight to accept the bid or an offer from whoever that we're going to sell it outright without going through the redevelopment commission.
That's correct, and I would strongly recommend that you adopt a policy so that we don't do one-offs. One-offs will create a mess. It's one rule, good for one, good for all. So if the policy is going to be city-owned property in the redevelopment area that has already been declared surplus does not go to the redevelopment commission for any reviews or conditions or deed restrictions, this board will sell it outright.
Thank you.
That's
All right. So at this point, we'll
what I
entertain.
would want to do. I don't know if other members have comments.
If there's no comments, I'll entertain a motion if someone wants to make one.
Did they have any comments?
How do we construct that motion?
Yeah, if you don't make one, you just pass.
We don't have to consider,
Mr. Attorney, could you help craft a motion and someone could move on that, please?
Yes, that you're directing staff to implement a policy whereby all real property located within the redevelopment area that is solely owned by the city will not be reviewed by the redevelopment commission, and bids on that surplus property will come directly to the Board of Aldermen for consideration.
is that what we're seeking to do, is to develop a policy tonight, or we were just looking at this case?
Well, two things. We're gonna create a lot of confusion if we don't have a policy that is crystal clear so that everyone knows how to engage with the city for city-owned parcels. So tonight, you can entertain a motion to offer this property, it's already been declared surplus, offer it for sale, and entertain any offer that's submitted by any citizen for this property. That's one issue. The second issue is, in conjunction with that, is that going forward, all city-owned property in the redevelopment area will not be sent to the redevelopment commission for consideration of any deed restrictions, meaning whoever buys it and can do whatever they want with it or not, that the use of that parcel will not be considered.
Okay, so you're saying this motion is a combination of the two?
Well, we're going to break it down. The first motion was the notion that the mayor stated, that this property located at 1101 Main Street has already been declared surplus property, and the board is willing to entertain offers for that property.
So let me do that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion and walk me through it now again, that we will entertain
Offers
offers.
for the real property located at 1101 Main Street.
Thank you, for the real property located at 1101 Main Street.
I second it.
We have a motion, a second.
Thank you.
Everyone clear on the motion? All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Best.
Alderman Best,
Yes?
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries. Now, the second piece is,
Yes, sir, and let me ask the board this. There is city-owned parcels, and then there are city-county-owned parcels. You may view those the same, or you may not. But if you view them the same, let's go ahead and get the process clear. We just want to make sure that going forward, citizens have the exact same process available to them. So, right now, city properties and city-county properties go to the Redevelopment Commission. And what we're, I think, entertaining tonight is discontinuing that process and just having those offers come to you directly.
so let me make it even more complex.
Okay.
I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, if a citizen is interested in a parcel that's owned by the county and the city, they can go to either the county or the city and make
Yes,
an
sir.
offer.
They
So
certainly-
we can't really put a rule in place to say a city, county-owned parcel has to go to redevelopment commission, because the county could initiate that process on their own.
They could, but we have an excellent working relationship.
Sure.
And they communicate very quickly. And if there was a very strategic piece that we owned together that we felt we needed deed restrictions on, the county would convey it to the city and then to the commission, and then the restriction could be imposed.
But the way to avoid all of this is, number one, create a policy, and number two, periodically review our inventory and give to the redevelopment commission the parcels that this board feels comfortable giving to them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at this point, the motion would be to adopt a policy to where city and county or city-owned property.
Any real property in which the city owns an interest that has been declared surplus would be available for public bid straight to the Board of Aldermen, directly to the Board of Aldermen.
Anybody want to move on that one?
Yeah. I make a motion that a policy be put in place that any city real property that is owned by the city will not go to the redevelopment commission. That,
We're gonna have a little twist on that. Yeah,
Okay.
Let's do it this way. Any real property in which the city owns an interest that has been declared surplus is offered for sale with bids coming directly to the board through the clerk's office. That would be your motion.
I mean,
So moved.
Yeah, you can say so moved if you'd like to say all that.
all right, as long as everybody understands it. So move.
All right,
Second.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you all. Item number 12, consider adopting a resolution approving the sale of 1724 Rim Avenue. And I will also throw in item number 13, consider adopting a resolution approving the sale of 2308 Pearson Street. If it's unanimous, we can consider both of those together. Mr. Hughes.
Okay, and Mr. Eugene Kelly has tendered an offer of $10,200 for the purchase of the Rim Avenue property. The offer was advertised, but no upset bids were received. The property is a vacant .044 acre residential lot with a tax value of $20,250 that was acquired jointly by the city and county in 2019 through tax foreclosure. If the property is sold for the bid amount, the city will receive $3,432.43, and the county will receive $6,767.57 from those proceeds. On the next property, the third property development and estate investment group tendered an offer of $2,500 for the purchase of 2308 Pearson Street. The offer was advertised, but no upset bids were received. The property is a vacant .115 acre residential lot with a tax value of $5,000 that was acquired jointly by the city and county in 2018 through tax foreclosure. If the property is sold for this bid amount, the city will receive $596.88, and the county $1,903.12 from those proceeds.
Does the board have questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving the sale of 1724 Rim Avenue as well as approving the sale at 2308 Pearson Street.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Alderman Creel, did you have something?
I'm sorry, I think.
Second.
Okay, all right, very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Creel.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 14, consider adopting a resolution establishing a municipal service district committee. Mr. Hughes.
So in response to interest in the Municipal Service District Committee, we held public input meetings on May 25th and June 15th at City Hall. The reason for that was to discuss interest in creating the committee, what the proposed structure of that committee would look like, and potential projects. We sent letters to all MSD taxpayers inviting them to attend the meetings. Total from the two meetings, we had about 62 attend. These meetings were also broadcast on City 3 TV and Facebook. And basically, the combination from the two meetings, there were about almost 800 views for those meetings. So what we are looking at proposing is a committee of 10 voting members that would include 6 commercial members, broken down in the following categories: a large commercial representative, hospitality representative featuring hotel, bed and breakfast, a restaurant representative, a retail establishment representative, entertainment nightlight representative, and professional services representative. And then 4 residential members, with the caveat being the representatives must maintain a primary resident in the dwelling that is located within the MSD. Also looked at 4 ex officio non-voting members that would include the Ward 1 Alderman, the city manager, the finance director, and the Swiss Bear executive director. Committee members would be appointed by the governing board to 3-year terms. There would be no limit on successive terms. The board would in fact have the ability to reappoint as needed, or they could remove members as needed. There would be an attendance requirement to where members must attend at least 3 meetings within any 12-month period. And the goal of this committee would be to vet potential projects, bring those back to the governing board for recommendation, and the board would have final approval on any of those recommendations. If the board so chooses to proceed with this, we would start with an application process. Based on whatever feedback we get from this, we would send that information out to MSD taxpayers to give them an opportunity to apply. We would give it probably about 2 or 3 weeks, see what we have. I think as early as the second meeting in September, we could probably bring a slate back for the board to consider, and then we could go from there. So happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Board, have questions?
Yes, I do. Would you describe again the advisory committee selection process?
What the selection process would be. So anyone that was interested in serving on this committee would have to fill out an application.
Okay.
That would be an online application. We would ask them to also upload their resume. That would go straight to the city clerk. The clerk would in turn send that out to the board like we're doing currently with those things. When we have a full slate of candidates for this, we would bring that information to you at an upcoming meeting. And so, for an example, if we're looking at the commercial breakdown, in the application it would list, just like if it's a large commercial representative, that would only qualify for folks that have real estate property valued at $2 million or more. So they would provide some information to us. We would vet that to ensure that they meet that threshold. So if there's a slate of 5 or 6 that meet that guideline, then they would be listed under the slate for that seat itself, and on down the line with restaurant as well as retail as well as service, etc.
Okay. And so the Board of Aldermen will have timely access to the information that we need in order to select the committee?
That's correct. You would have time to review the application as well as the resumes to fill out all that information before it would come to the governing board to vote on.
Okay. And the other thing, what would be the policy then of those 10 voting members, if they might be a part of the Swiss Bear?
If they were members of Swiss Bear?
Yes.
Well, if they own property, if those individuals own property in the MSD, then just because they're a member of Swiss Bear, that wouldn't necessarily have any impact on anything. The ex officio member of the executive director of Swiss Bear, that is the only one that we're recommending, and they would not have any voting rights. It would just be an advisory capacity.
Thank you.
So you're saying that the 10 members is ones that will actually have the power to make and change rules and regulations?
They would make recommendations on projects
Okay.
to fund projects within the MSD based on the amount of tax revenue that MSD generates. So they would vet those projects and then make recommendations to the governing board.
Okay. So the governing board would be that would be the final stop with us of how the taxpayers' dollars in the municipal district is spent.
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. All right.
Alderman Prill?
One of the issues that the board is going to have to decide is, assuming that we are going to get a number of applicants based on the number of participants in the different meetings that we had, we're going to have more applicants than seats on the advisory board. And one of the issues is that you will probably see people qualifying for more than one category. So and I'm going to use John Harrelson as an example. Mr. Harrelson would qualify under the 2 million plus valuation category. He would hotel hospitality category he would qualify for, potentially even restaurant, since he does have a restaurant in his hotel, nightlife. I mean, he does have some evening activities. So he could potentially qualify in probably 4 different categories. So when we are going through the evaluation process, I think one of the questions that we have to decide is, are we going to review all of the applications that come in and then make a decision on each category? Or are we going to just do it through put the names of each category, those that qualify, into a hat and just randomly draw an individual to fill that position? So that's one of the, I think, questions that the board needs to think about as we start this process. For the 4 residential positions, there again, do we want to get into trying to pick and choose 4 of the individuals that qualify for the residential categories, or do we want to just do it by, the luck of the draw and avoid any kind of discussions as to who may be the best candidate for a position and all that good stuff that potentially can happen? So just something for the board to think about as to how you would want to approach making the selections for the various categories. Another, just something that I'll bring up, and the more I think about it, we probably don't need to take any formal action, but it was just a concern that I had, is that currently the city has, I believe, it's at least 1.6 million plus in the MSD fund. My original concern was that we might want to put some curbs on how much of that money may get allocated right off the bat. I mean, I would be a little bit concerned if the new advisory board were to come back to us with recommendations to spend every last penny that is available in the first year. The ultimate decision is ours, so I don't know whether or not we need to have any kind of a policy in place, but I just wanted to bring that up for you to think about. I think I would feel more comfortable if maybe informally we as a board were to look a little bit longer term on how these funds and when these funds are going to be utilized. But I realize that is dependent upon the nature of projects that are recommended to us as to how quickly, that money might be depleted or used over the next year or 2 or longer. So just a couple of concerns.
I think your last one is a great point, and ultimately we have the say over that. But I don't know that we couldn't establish a policy like we have for our enterprise funds, or LGC wants us to require a certain balance. We could say, hey, look, we want to make sure that we always maintain a certain percentage or dollar amount, so that way those folks that are on that advisory committee know how much money they do have to work with. Because again, it's just an advisory committee, so I think we could discuss that one. The second one, going back to your first comment, so Mr. Hughes, how do you envision a situation like Mr. Harrelson, for example, that would qualify for multiple categories? Obviously, he can't have more than 1 seat, I wouldn't think. So have you thought about that?
Yeah, basically, in great example, if we're talking about Mr. Harrelson.
Sorry, John, but it's nature of the beast.
The best example,
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
right.
to
Sure.
raise the concern.
So if he qualified for 4 or 5 of those categories, and he was appointed at one, that's what he gets. It would just
Well,
be
should
named
he
as
only
that.
be able to apply for one category? And that way there would be no question.
I wouldn't. I don't think that's fair, because the bigger investment that you have, you should have more of a right to have an opportunity on the board. So, for example, if he qualifies for 4 of these and he can only apply for 1 and he doesn't get in that particular category, now he's out, and he's one of the largest taxpayers in the district. So I think you should be able to apply for all of them personally.
And as well, if you have property owners that meet multiple categories, and there are several, then they could put a ranking on their preference for which category is the highest that they would like to be considered for as well.
As far as the residential ones, we have four openings, and let's say we have 20 people that are qualified, that meet the criteria, that's going to be vetted to make sure it is their primary residence and they are indeed the owner and the taxpayer. If everybody on the board was given an opportunity to pick 4, then you're probably going to wind up with a lot more, because I doubt we're going to have 4 unanimous decisions. So maybe we might want to consider some sort of ranking process, 1 through ever how many, and then the ones that get the most votes would, the top 4 vote getters, I guess, essentially. That, or pull the names out of a hat like Alderman Friel recommended. So I guess we have some time to think about how we're going to actually do that process, but tonight you're looking for direction on creating the group. Is that correct?
That's correct.
One last concern that I have, and I expressed it earlier, there will be no limit on successive terms, and I know continuity has its place. However, I feel that in the interest of all people that are a part of the MSD footprint, at least they should be provided opportunity to be a part of the MSD. If we do no limit on successive terms, then that we could end up in places where we've seen in the past that 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, however the case, even though they're board appointed, might just end up serving on the MSD for the next 12 years.
This is a very valid point, and I'm sure I'm not an MSD taxpayer, but if I was Mr. Harrelson, for example, I would say if I own this much and I've made this much of an investment, I deserve to always have a voice on that particular board. That's going to be the counter argument, but we could certainly entertain, maybe having a cool down period, 2 consecutive terms, and you have to come off before you can go back on again. That's something we could consider if that's a consideration or a concern of the board. And then another one that I had was in section 6, it says the board of aldermen in its discretion may replace any voting member who fails to attend 3 meetings within any 12-month period. If they only meet 3 times a year, we don't know how many times they're going to meet. So
The goal will be on a quarterly basis for that committee.
Okay, so they could be on this board, have 4 meetings and only make 1 of them, and they would consider being a member in good standing. Something the board may want to think about.
Yeah, but let's consider again about the consecutive terms. I thought that was a good idea, Mayor, that maybe 2 consecutive terms rotate off and whatever. Again, my saying, every voice has value.
So Alderman Royal is advocate. I'm trying to find that section.
Section 6.
And would that be on the committee or representing a particular seat on the committee? In other words, if you were on the in a retail seat, you could only serve, you could not serve more than 2 successive terms in that seat. But if you also had a hotel seat, you might run for that seat. So you could be on the committee successively, but not in the same seat. Or on the residential, potentially.
Okay, so then when we lay out the plan, we need to see what that looks like.
Yes.
So I think the plan that's in front of us tonight, if we want to make changes, we need to give them direction
Okay.
now so we
We
can
do,
approve it.
Okay. Mr. Hughes, explain that again, please, about the successive terms and what seat you're on, whether it's the commercial or whether it's whatever. Would you explain that again?
So the city attorney made the comment, if you limited it to two terms, at the end of that second term, if committee member A was seated to the retail seat and his term expired, and there was an availability for a restaurant, and he had an interest in a restaurant. He owned the restaurant. He could basically fill out an application and request to be seated in that seat.
If that be the case, then that's fine. Yeah.
So all these terms are going to start and end at the same time?
That's
based
how
off
it's
of-
set out, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna try to help dissect this. Is everybody good with everything in the recommendation with the exception of the successive terms? Is there any other points of contention?
And to the mayor's point about participation, are we happy with the making 3/4 of the meetings the floor or half?
I
or-
think it should be half myself. I mean, if you have 4 meetings a year and you can't make 2, then you probably don't need to be serving on the board. That's me. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
And we can clarify regular meetings too, because sometimes special meetings are curveballs and you
Sure.
can't deal with that.
Right, so, and so just to be clear, we had it stringent, attend 3 meetings out of that 4 for that committee.
So you're saying they have to
They
attend
have
3?
to- That's correct.
Okay.
3 out of 4.
Okay, all right, well, I'm fine with that then. That would be
And
75%.
again, that's regular meetings, correct?
That's correct, yes.
I'm really hoping that as much interest as there is in this, that we're not going to have a issue with people not attending. So I don't think that's going to be a concern. So now to address the consecutive terms, Mr. Attorney, we're going to have to rely on you to make some changes to this. So we want to make sure that there is a term limit for each seat
Yes, sir.
for 2 consecutive terms.
Yes, sir.
Does the board understand? So you can't serve in the same seat more than 2 consecutive terms. Everybody good with that language?
Yes.
Okay.
So 2 things are going to happen. Staff is going to be working on that application and will circulate that application to you so you can see what's going to be available to the citizenry. And then on your next agenda, we will have the resolution with these revisions so that you can adopt it. So nothing will be slowed down in the process.
And I assume our clerks, as she will be receiving those, she'll be able to vet those to make sure that they meet the criteria. And then one last clarification. So it says hospitality representative. So the person applying are we saying that they can appoint someone for their seat?
My interpretation, yes, sir, because if you're a corporation or an entity, legal entity, there's not a person associated with that.
Okay.
So you could, you may find that your manager is better suited to serve, potentially. And I would still call that as one owner, one seat. So you can't have 4 of your managers serving in 4 seats and then you serve in the 5th seat so that you now control 5 seats. Whether you want to serve or you want your agent to serve, that's your opportunity.
So there's a limit of 1 seat per legal entity
Or
or
person.
individual.
Yes, sir, exactly.
Okay. Does that
Exactly.
make sense?
Say it again, please.
So you're limited to 1 seat per legal entity or individual owner. So for example, Mr. Harrelson has several businesses. He's only going to essentially, with all the businesses he owns, he can only hold 1 seat. That's the maximum.
If you have 5 corporations, you can't appoint 5 different agents as potential applicants to sit in those seats and thereby control half the board.
Let me ask one more question, if you would, please. Ex officio members, is there some limit for numbers, or a number of 4 was the magic number, or that's all that is needed?
We looked at that grouping, and based on, I think that's adequate for what we need for input. We have Swiss Bear, we've got the finance director who will be able to provide that information. We'll have the city manager who can provide input, and the Ward 1 Alderman as well. We're happy to make any adjustments that the board may have for that.
Well, you know, I always seek inclusion, and there is no representation of diversity in these ex officio members. So how do we approach
What
inclusion?
recommendations do you have, Alderman Royal?
I didn't know if 4 was the maximum. I know there's a model that we were following. If any other member of the Board of Aldermen would like to be a part of it, other than Alderman Priel, that would be my recommendation, just for inclusion, just for diversity.
So you could legally add a 5th ex officio member. That would be another member of the Board of Aldermen, but I don't think you could legally classify and say it has to be a minority representative.
No, sir.
Okay. Would the board like to add a 5th ex officio member to provide that opportunity?
I don't have a problem with it.
Alderman Kinsey, any input?
I don't have a problem with it.
Alderman Astor?
It's getting ready to be a pretty large board, but I don't care.
Alderman Brill? Sure area you represent, so.
I don't have a particular problem with it. I guess my question is there somebody in the board that has an interest in participating as an ex officio member?
I just wanted to make sure that we had opportunity, that's all. If anyone was interested.
And so let me ask you this, since it's a non-voting position, does it count toward a quorum?
No, sir.
So we could add a 5th ex officio member and say it's another member of the Board of Aldermen, and then if we decide we wanted to add someone, if someone shows
Yeah, it
interest,
could
we
be
can?
it could be an ex officio at-large member of the Board of Aldermen, if you wanted to. And then you would vote among yourselves who would be the ex officio member,
Okay.
who would be expected to attend and participate.
Okay. I don't
Thank
think
you.
anyone had an issue with that, so if you want to make that addition.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everything else, if the board is good with, I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution with the,
No, sir, let me draft that, please,
Okay.
and have it before you proper.
okay,
And that's why I was mentioning, this will appear on your next agenda.
okay,
In proper, clear form, and at the same time, simultaneously, the application will be prepared, be circulated, and it can even go out, because we're just soliciting applicants for the committee. And then on your next agenda, this will be exactly as you want it.
so we're good to go ahead and release it and start recruiting.
Sure, yeah,
folks who wanna-
exactly,
okay.
yeah. Do you have an interest in participating in a committee that's going to be formed in 2 weeks?
Okay,
I just don't want there to be any question about what you're doing tonight.
right.
Resolutions need to be in written form, and I don't know if you want to take a break tonight for me to go draft that and come back.
okay. Is the board good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we will move on to item number 15. Consider adopting a resolution approving a grant from the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program for law enforcement liaison. Chief Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. I never grow tired of standing before you, seeking your approval on grant funding. We believe that the New Bern Police Department are good stewards of every dollar that is awarded to us by whatever grant entity is out there. I'm excited to stand before you to say that not only have we, or more to the point, have you approved 2 of the 3 grants that are in front of you regarding North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Programs, but there's a 3rd. And the 3rd grant, which is new, essentially provides the New Bern Police Department with $25,000 to augment our overtime budget specific to traffic safety. And what we would be looking for in terms of utilizing that $25,000 is to engage in more traffic enforcement opportunities. There is no shortage of roads and streets in this town that could use another officer running radar. And I think I could probably name a street in every one of your wards that I would love to place a police officer there to reinforce the expectations that I think all of us have with respect to traffic safety. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any one of the 3 grants that is before you today.
So Board, for clarification, we're talking about item number 15, 16, and 17. Does the board have questions?
So Chief, none of these grants have to be matched. That's
That's
good
correct.
thing.
I
So-
apologize. I should have made that comment. This is monies granted to us, and we do not have to produce any matching funds.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Is the board comfortable with a motion to approve all three at one time? If so, I'll make that motion.
Sure.
So it's items 15, 16, and 17, so it's make a motion to adopt a resolution approving a grant from the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program for Law Enforcement Liaison, in addition to a grant from the Governor's Highway Safety Program for Bike Safety, and last, approving a grant from the Governor's Highway Safety Program for overtime.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Royal.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Item number 18 is to consider adopting a resolution approving TD Bank N.A. as the winning bidder for an installment financing agreement for the Stanley White Recreation Center project. Ms. Ostrom.
At the July 11th board meeting, Davenport Public Finance presented an overview of financing options for the Stanley White Rec Center, the sewer improvements projects, and the FY 23-24 vehicles and equipment. Proposals were solicited from various financial institutions for these three financing projects. We reviewed the proposals with Davenport and Bond Council, and tonight Ted Cole with Davenport is here to present those to you and discuss the recommended financing proposals, which are the next three agenda items requesting to adopt a resolution approving the winning bidders. Number 18 is installment financing agreement for the Stanley White Rec Center. Number 19 is the revenue bond for sewer improvements, and number 20 is the FY 23-24 vehicles and equipment. I'd like to introduce you to Ted Cole.
Good evening. Appreciate being here. So we'll take these in order, with the first being Stanley White. I think you all have all of this material in front of you. The intention was to really cover pages 1 through 5. There are some things in the appendix that you all can probably read okay, but will be hard for the audience to see on the screen. It's really meant to be backup if needed. So if you go to the second page of this presentation related to Stanley White, we did a request for proposal. We sent 3 requests out for the 3 different loans we're going to talk about tonight. This particular RFP for Stanley White, we asked for both 15 and 20-year terms from the banks. You might remember that I presented in July. We had 2 components to this loan. Component A, which was at $6.5 million, was intended to be the long-term portion of the loan that the city would pay for the duration that represented the local funding for the project. Remember, for that project, you all have also received a commitment from FEMA for, I believe, about $8 million. There's some uncertainty of exactly how the FEMA money will flow. Will there be any delays? And for that reason, we created a component B for this, which was $3.5 million, which is intended to facilitate cash flowing of project costs while you might be waiting for FEMA reimbursement. And the idea with component B was that it could be paid off early as the FEMA money is provided, although we have secured a long-term funding commitment with the ability to prepay it without penalty. So the entire proposal for $10 million can be paid back over the long term. We're going to be recommending 15 years, but you have the ability, particularly with component B, to prepay that early if, when, and how, depending upon how the FEMA money reimburses, so that doesn't need to stay out for the full term of the loan, ideally. We did receive 3 proposals. We talked to a number of banks. These may not be household names to you all, but these are lenders that we deal with on a regular basis. Capital One, TD Bank, and Truist Bank, which Truist is, the merged BB&T SunTrust. So we received 3 proposals. We've summarized those on page 3. There is more detail in the appendix. I can go into some of that detail if you have questions. But I think these are the important takeaways. And we've highlighted in green TD Bank option 2, which is where we've landed as a group, ourselves and staff and bond counsel, as our recommendation. You'll see that the top half of this page is dealing with the 15-year term, and the bottom half is dealing with the 20-year term. TD Bank did not provide 20-year bank rates, but Capital One and Truist did. Ultimately, where we've landed is the 15-year term for both the component A and B. But again, remember the B, our intention would be that would be paid off more quickly as the FEMA reimbursements roll through. And particularly with TD Bank, it's their option 2. They provided a few different options that primarily differentiated themselves in the interest rate and the prepayment ability. Option 2 provides you the greatest prepayment flexibility with TD Bank. It's prepayable at any time without penalty. You can see under Capital One, 15-year, you would be precluded from prepaying it for the first 8 years. With Truist, they have a 10-year prepayment lockout, or there's also something called a make-whole call. That is essentially, you can pay this loan off early, but you're going to make us, the bank, whole on the interest we would have earned had the loan gone to full maturity. So it allows you to get out of the loan, but it doesn't provide any economic advantage to you doing so. So we felt like, given the complexity of the 2 series, the ability to want to pay off the component B as early as we can, option 2 gave us the best combination of a fixed interest rate at 4.5% for the full 15 years for both the component A and B, but preserve the ability to prepay without penalty.
Mr. Cole,
yes.
question, this may be for Ms. Ostrom. Didn't the LGC put some restrictions on how long we can finance that second portion?
So the LGC wanted to make sure that we could at least prepay it.
Okay.
But they would not honor up to a 10 million. They said that they would definitely consider and was favorable of doing the 3.5. And then it would be paid off. We have to pay it off when we receive all of our FEMA reimbursements.
So what's being presented here complies with LGC requirements? Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. So that's kind of, at a very high level, the 3 proposals, again, the difference between 15 and 20 and some of the nuances about the prepayment language. The numbers on page 4, and I should change that slide. Hopefully that's clear to everybody. Again, if you look at TD Bank option 2, go down that column, the 15-year term, the total payback over the 15-year term for component A is about $8.7 million. For component B, if it goes the entire 15 years, would be $4.9 million. Total payback would be $13.6 million. You can see how that compares to Capital One or the other TD options. And what we call the max annual debt service, meaning what's your sort of annual payment. With TD Bank option 2, we're at just under $1.1 million. So you can see that may be a little bit higher than the other options, but primarily what it's provided for is, 1, I think an attractive rate, 2, that prepayment language, which I think is important. So that's how the annual and total debt service compares across those proposals. And please stop me if there's a question. Lastly, for discussion was just our recommendation, TD Bank 15-year option 2. That's a rate of a 4.50. That is locked in. We've told them that they were going to be the recommended bidder. They've locked that rate. If for some reason you didn't want to approve it tonight, you're not obligated to do anything with TD Bank. There's no penalty, but they have locked the rate understanding that they're the recommended bidder, and it would be fixed through a closing that would occur in September. And a basic schedule this evening: consideration of a resolution that names the winning bidder, final approval of the loan, including loan documents at your September 12th meeting. That's the same day that the LGC would consider approval of this loan, and we would close by the end of September.
I have a question for you. I think I'm on your page 4. So if we have the intention of paying off what you're calling option B or component B.
Component B, yeah.
I'm assuming that you did an analysis to say that it's worthwhile to go with option 2 versus option 1, even with the make-whole call?
Yeah, with option 1, component B, and I'm going to go back to page 4, like you said, you'll see that option 1, component B, which is a 15-year payback of $4.9 million, the make-whole call, even if you wanted to pay it off in year 3 or 4, you're essentially paying back the 4.9, because they're going to be made whole as if it stays to full maturity.
Correct.
Whereas option 2, if you pay it back in year 2 or 3, your total payback will be the $3.5 million plus whatever interest is accrued. It'll be less than 4.9. So I think, if I'm answering it, I mean, there's no scenario where paying it off early, you're better off with option 1 than you are with option 2. And if it happens to stay out to the full final, you're no worse off.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking is because we know how long it can take FEMA to pay for things. So if it was like a 5-year cutoff or 5-year break even on the make call, I just want to make sure that we considered that. But it looks like you've looked at the maximum amount. That's what you do with your.
That's right.
Okay.
So I think you're absolutely better off with that component B under that option 2 prepayment language.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay? And remember, you've held a public hearing for this particular loan. That was required. I think we did that in July. And that's the loan that will be secured by the rec center, the deed of trust on the rec center. Installment financing. So if there aren't any other questions, I know there's a resolution for your consideration, but happy to continue talking through this.
I guess, does the board want to take these individually, or do we want to hear the next 2 items and consider them all at one time?
But we need to do it individually.
Okay. All right. What's the pleasure of the board on item number 18?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution approving TD Bank as the winning bidder for the installment financing agreement for the Stanley White Recreation Center project.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call on item number 18, starting with Alderman Astor.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Creel.
Yes.
Alderman Royal.
Yes.
Mayor Odham.
Yes, motion carries. On to item number 19.
Okay. This is the revenue bond associated with 2 utility projects, the Northwest Interceptor and the Township 7 Force Main project. Collectively, same setup, did an RFP, separate and distinct from the other RFPs, 15 and 20-year terms is what we requested. 6.1 million is the amount. We received 3 proposals. Capital One, Truist, and Webster Bank. Webster was not on the last one, they're on this one. Again, not necessarily a household name, but they're very active in municipal lending. And remember, with the revenue bond, what we're pledging to the lender here is the net revenues of the combined water, sewer, and electric system. So there's no asset that will secure the loan. It'll be secured by the revenues of those systems. And you've done that before, issued revenue bonds just like we're proposing.
So this is a sewer project, so we're pledging our faith for the revenue for all enterprises?
That's right. The city has a revenue bond credit, and when that was developed, it was purposely set up to include the revenues associated with all three utilities, water, sewer, and electric. But you could fund projects in any one utility, but that's still secured legally by the collective revenues of all three. Now, internally, I think the intention is we're going to pay this back from sewer revenue, but technically the lender has a lien on all of those revenues. And that's not all that uncommon, but it happens to be the way this revenue bond credit was set up. It's been a number of years now, but so it is the collective revenues of all three utilities.
Alderman Astor?
Yeah, would that have any effect on the electric department if they were looking at another project where they would need a loan of this size?
So what the process is with the revenue bond is there's revenue bond documents that are go into a number of details about if you enter into a loan, what is the security that you're offering the lender. Also, there's specific language in there about how do you issue additional revenue bonds in the future for whatever permitted purpose there may be. So when and if the time comes to do a borrowing for electric, yes, we're going to have to demonstrate, just like we have to do here, that we have a certain amount of revenue bond already outstanding. We have to make those payments. And we will have to demonstrate that we can make those payments and take on the new debt that you might want to do and still be able to meet the covenants of the bonds. And those three systems together have a very strong cash flow. So I'm not going to say there's no concern ever, but I certainly feel like the way those three systems collectively run through the audit, there's very strong ability to issue additional debt, but we will have to go through that process, whether it's an electric project, a water, or a sewer project, be able to demonstrate that the revenues are there to support not only the debt that's already in place, but any new debt that you're proposing to issue.
So if we're looking at building a $20 million electrical substation within the next few years, what kind of an effect would that have on us on financing for that substation?
Well, I mean, you'll have a number of options to consider at that time on how to finance it. Presumably, it would be a revenue bond, and we would have to go through an analysis at that time to say, do we have enough revenue based upon our current rates and charges and customer base to cover that new debt service, or do we need to raise rates to position ourselves to be able to cover that debt service? And it's really a twofold question. It's done first, I think it would be first probably, is just for you all to determine, can the electric system cover that debt on its own, right? You want to make sure, I presume, that if you borrow money for the electric system, you want to be comfortable that the electric system can pay it back without support from water and sewer. Just like with this loan, we want to make sure the sewer system can pay it back without support from water and electric. So you want to make sure locally electric can cover it, but for the bonds, you get the benefit of including the revenues from those other systems. So it's a little more liberal for the bond issue, but locally, I think you're in the same spot. Whether you do this loan or not, this will presumably be covered by sewer revenues and not impact your electric system. And a few years from now, whatever the case may be, you've got to make sure that the electric system can cover this new debt that you're describing.
Will the sewer fund be able to support this?
Yes, yep, we did
By
that
itself?
analysis. Mhm.
Okay? All right, so three proposals. Same sort of setup here on page 3. The top half looks at the 15-year payback. the bottom half looks at the 20-year payback. Webster Bank, 15 years is ultimately the proposal as we work through all of this that we've landed on as our recommendation. That's at a fixed rate of a 4.45, so slightly better than the 15-year rate you got on Stanley White. The prepayment language under Webster Bank, I'm looking under the far right column. It's non-callable for the first 4 years. In years 5 and 6, you can prepay it with a 1% penalty. Year 7 and beyond, you can prepay it at par or 0 penalty, no penalty. Average annual debt service, about $570,000. Total payback over the life, about $8.5 million. So looked at all of these options, 15 and 20, the different banks, different prepayment language. This one is a bit more straightforward. And ultimately, the recommendation is Webster at a 4.45, 15 years, which is what we've included here on the page 4. And like the prior one, there is a resolution for y'all to consider awarding it tonight, coming back on the 12th to adopt what's called a bond order and do the final resolution. LGC approval for this one is also required. That would occur on the 12th. By the way, the applications to the LGC have all been submitted and closing by the end of September. Any questions on that?
I just have one. It's probably a really dumb one, but is there any risk with a bank like Webster that none of us have heard of, but you have? I mean, I assume.
No, I don't believe so. They're lending you their money, and it's fixed rate, and you have an obligation to make the payments. You're not putting any revenues or deposits with them. I don't think, even if Webster were to have trouble or sell or merge, you're obligated to pay them back, and if they can't accept that payment, I don't know what happens. That would be I don't think that would happen. But if they were to have serious financial trouble, you have no assets with them. I don't think you have any exposure from the city's credit if they were to have trouble. So I don't think there's any risk.
Okay, Alderman Kinsey.
How long has this bank been around and where are they located?
Webster. They recently merged. The Webster name it's a name of the merged bank that they merged with. Their two banks came together, and one of them kept the name Webster. We deal with a fellow that works out of Charlotte. He's a rep for this region. I don't know how long.
And what was the name of the other bank that they merged with? You know that?
I do. Sterling, yes. Sterling Bank or Sterling National. We've dealt with, for what it's worth, it's not a long time. We've probably dealt with them for the last 10 or 15 years. We can try to get you a little more information on that history if that would be helpful.
Yeah, it would, because, these are banks that I've never heard of myself. Maybe you have. And, sometime jumping out there being the first one, don't mean you're going to finish first.
I just looked them up, Alderman Kinsey. It looks like they're in the Northeast, up in Connecticut, and they were founded in 1935. Mm-hmm. They have annual revenue of $1.2 billion, so they're probably more of a regional bank. Mm-hmm. Okay. They may not have heard of BB&T up there in that part of the world.
Correct.
So. Okay. Yeah,
and Capital One I think is more of a household name just for perspective, and we all probably associate them with credit cards. They bid these types of loans out of an office in Ohio. So again, we have a number of banks that look at municipal loans outside of maybe their commercial bank footprint. It's fairly common, and I think when you look across North Carolina, you will find, for what it's worth, a number of municipalities that have debt outstanding with Webster and Capital One, as well as the locals.
I was just curious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions on number 19?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution approving Webster Bank as the winning bidder for the issuance of a revenue bond for improvements to the combined enterprise system to include the Northwest Interceptor Rehabilitation Phase 2 project and Township 7 Sewer Improvements Phase 3 project.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Kinsey.
Alderman Kinsey,
I'm just not comfortable. No.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 20 is consider adopting a resolution approving the TD Equipment Finance Incorporated as the winning bidder for installment financing agreement for FY 23-24 vehicles and equipment.
Okay, final one, working off of page 2, same RFP process, the amount of $4.9 million, roughly a 5-year term for this, shorter term because of the expected useful life of the assets. We've got 6 proposals. Again, some names you will recognize, some you may not, but they do all oftentimes submit proposals for these sorts of requests. Page 3 gives you the takeaway, the key takeaways. Interest rate first. You can see the range goes from a 4.08 to a 4.90. The prepayment language kind of all over the map, which is typical. There's not a standard prepayment language. For TD Bank, which we're recommending at the 4.08, they will allow prepayment with a 1% penalty. The annual payments, these are in thousands, so for them it would be, call it $1.1 million a year, just under that. Over the total life of the loan through maturity, $5.49 million. And you can see the sort of the spread across all 6 banks that kind of follow the interest rate. In terms of recommendation, TD at 4.08, again, that's locked in. This particular loan does not require LGC approval. That's one of the carve-outs that they don't have to approve loans for vehicles. And in this case, we have sort of the same setup. We have tonight the consideration of a resolution awarding it. May have the need. I believe we've decided to come back to you for final approval on the 12th, but there is no LGC approval. After the 12th, we'd be in a position to close before their deadline.
Foster came on page 6. It's the breakout by fund. I'm assuming general fund is police cars and fire truck are included in that. Okay.
There's police cars, fire trucks, and there's some public work vehicles too.
Okay. All right, does the board have questions on item number 20?
If there are no questions, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving TD Equipment Finance, Inc. as the winning bidder for an installment financing agreement for fiscal year 23-24 vehicles and equipment.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on item number 20. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Best.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Creel,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
your help.
We'll see you in September.
Very good.
Thanks.
Moving on to item number 21, consider adopting a budget ordinance amendment for FY 23-24. Ms. Ostrom.
This budget ordinance amendment recognizes 3 grant awards that were previously presented to you, numbers 15, 16, and 17. For the police department from the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program for $5,000 for bike safety, $30,000 for law enforcement liaison, and $25,000 for overtime. And another grant awarded to the fire department from the North Carolina Department of Homeland Security Grant Program in the amount of $30,000 for the purchase of boots and helmets. A total of $90,000, and there's no match required.
Okay, does the board have questions on item number 21?
Make a motion to adopt the budget ordinance amendment for fiscal year 23-24.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Prill.
Alderman Prill,
Yes.
Alderman Royal,
Yes.
Alderman Astor,
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey,
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Mayor Odom.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 22 is appointments. Alderman Kinsey, I show you have one for the Planning and Zoning Board.
Not completed.
Okay. The appointments to the Dangerous Dog Board, so if the board had an opportunity to look in, it's like second to the last page of the package, we have Dr. Steve Stelma, Dr. Bobby Torba, and Donna Baker's term. They've all expired. All three of them are willing to serve again. So it's a pleasure of the board on that one.
Can we appoint all three of them at one time?
Sure.
I make a motion that we appoint all three, or reappoint all three.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, they are reappointed. And then we now have a seat on the East Carolina Council of Government since the board decided to move forward with membership for that organization again. Is there anyone that has any interest in serving on the East Carolina Council of Government?
Johnny, did he serve on that before?
He used to, correct, Alderman Kinsey?
I'll serve again.
Anyone else? Is that a motion?
That is a motion, yes.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Congratulations, Mr. Kinsey.
Thank you, sir.
Attorney's report,
Nothing to report tonight, Mayor.
city manager's report.
One item tonight, City of New Bern is one of 15 public power communities across North Carolina to have recently received the 2022 Public Power Award of Excellence. So Electric Cities of North Carolina presented 15 of these awards to communities with public power at the 2023 annual conference in Myrtle Beach. So Charlie and his staff went down there to pick this up. The awards reflect public power strategic priorities, recognizing exceptional achievement in the following categories: future-focused, strengthen public power, provide superior power, customer-centered innovation, and people. So we appreciate all the hard work that Charlie and his staff has done. At this time, I'd like to present this award. Charlie, come on up. I'm sure you'd like to say something about how proud you are of that award.
Happy to share this award with the community, and it's a testimony to the staff that we have and their due diligence and their commitment to public power and reliable power in this community. So thanks to staff for all the hard work, and thank you, board, for your leadership and your governance and making this a strong utility.
Very good, congratulations.
That's all I have tonight, sir.
All right.
Mayor, before we move
Yes, ma'am.
forward, I guess this may be the appropriate time to address, at our August 8th meeting, we voted on, the approval of our meeting coming up on the 29th, and the 30th and the 31st, and we was going to hold that meeting. It was for our strategic planning session at the Pleasant Hill Center, and I think that would be a great location to hold meetings that was not the duration of time period involved with those meetings, sitting in the fold-up type chairs. But that was just me, and I think another alderman has concerns about the time that we, as aldermen, and as the public and other staff persons that will be present at that meeting. But that was a concern I had, and I don't know how the board feels about it. And if y'all want to keep it at Pleasant Hill Center, that's fine too. But I just wanted to make that announcement to see what the board, how the board wants to, what action you want to take on that.
I feel it should be at City Hall because we have all the equipment here to take care of the recording and that sort of thing there, and for the public to be able to have a better input if it's
Mr. Manager, you have any comments?
So, yes, and in our discussions with with Lydia Altman, who is going to be our facilitator in the School of Government, the preference was to get into a room that's more conducive to one-on-one communications in small groups. The biggest issue with doing that in this room is we're going to have all the governing board members, plus we're going to have all the department heads, and we're not going to be able to do small roundtables because that's one of the things that is going to occur during this unless we move all these tables out of, all these chairs out of here and bring tables in. So it would really work better to do this at some place like Pleasant Hill or even West New Bern Recreation Center, and that's why we made the request to move it away from here.
when you say small groups, so how could the public participate and listen in small groups? So everybody, so they would have to be in a small group
So this
to
is
go from group to group to get information?
that's correct. So Alderman Kinsey, the public is welcome to come and watch this, but this is not public participation for this part. This is basically for staff and the elected officials to have discussions.
Another issue I have with that, I would like to be able to hear all comments from all aldermen and all staff persons. Because I know in the past, when you get in several groups, you're not hearing all information that's being presented.
And Alderman, best to respond to that. So the way that our consultant will be doing this is, yes, there will be small group breakouts, but at the end of those sessions, everyone will be coming back to make comments and reports on what those groups have discussed.
I don't know this for a fact, but I'm wondering, is the reason for the breakout is in the essence of time? Because if you did it all in one group, is it going to take longer because you would have to do everybody at one time?
It will, that's correct.
Okay. So two members,
So how are we going to engage the public in this?
I think there's going to be sections after we get to that point. This is a information gathering for the board first. I believe.
This is the kickoff meeting. Now, the public will be a part of this process. The strategic planning process is not these two meetings and we're done. This is going to take months to do. So the public will be invited to participate in sessions.
That was all I had.
Okay. So, does anyone else have any concerns, or we're going to stick with the original plan? I think you said you were moving the chairs and tables, so that concern will be
That's
addressed. All right, so we'll leave it as it is. Okay. Alderman Best, you've still got the floor for new business, so help yourself.
Oh, okay. I did have. I wanted to say thank you to the city, to Parks and Recs, and to Ms. Carey and Mr. James Bullock and all of the staff that was so instrumental in providing the day camp program for our citizens. And I've had a lot of people talk to me about they really appreciate the summer day camp. So I just wanted to thank them for that. And also I had an individual contact me and ask me, Mr. Hughes, if when Henderson Park is, I know you're in the process of doing a lot of work within the Henderson Park, will there be an entrance sign over on the Chapman Street side? There is no entrance side there. There is one over on 3rd Avenue, but not on the Chapman Street side.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Also, I wanted to ask Mr. Hughes, I know in the past we received our monthly reports from the New Bern Housing Authority. Why are we not continuing to receive those reports monthly?
One, I don't know how long it's been since you all have received that. Let me look into that.
Yeah, I mean, for my purpose, I mean, no other board member may not want to receive the report, but I think they were very, those reports that we received in the past held a lot of information, and I would just like to get that report, if
Okay,
you could, please.
we sure can.
And that's it. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Alderman Kinsey.
Not tonight.
Alderman Astor.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Alderman Royal. Alderman Prill.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
The only comment I would have, not sure if it ever went anywhere, but I still get complaints about the lack of street lights on Eden Street. So if we could have a survey done about that to figure out what the options are there. And then closed session.
Yes, sir. We'll need you briefly in closed session pursuant to 143-311-A5 to discuss the potential acquisition of real property.
Do I have a motion?
They moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are in closed session.